right, we are live and very excited to be part of the first Experimentation conference. My name is John Ostrowski, aka Positive John, and I'm currently working with iTech Media as principal for growth experiments.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrea. I'm originally from Italy. Also working for iTech Media as a senior experimentation manager, and also super excited for the talk that we're going to do today.
Yeah, if you want to know more about us and what we do, you can find us on LinkedIn. But Andrea, it's morning time. We're getting coffee together, and today we're talking about product experimentation from startup to multiple agile teams. Today we have a simple agenda with 3 objectives. To start with, we want to tell you why experimentation in the first place, but both from a personal and a business perspective. We follow that by agitating this discussion. Is it experimentation? Is it CRO? But we're not going to give you just a generic answer to that. And Andrea will help us closing the loop, describing a little bit more the skill set allocation for the different workflows that makes this experimentation overarching process that we have it in iTech Media. Andrea, we know we both talk a lot about those topics internally. It's just that today we finally decided to drink coffee together, record, and share with the world. But I think it's important for us to just be mindful and answer, who's this talk for? What do you think? Who's this talk going to help today?
This is for product-centric companies that are growing and they want to embed experimentation as part of their culture. It's definitely for leaders, founders, CRO people that want to find a common language in the process of experimentation, and definitely for people that are hiring and they are trying to understand what type of skills their teams need.
Okay, so product leaders, product people, and hiring managers. Okay, yeah, that's very cool. So for this presentation today, we're experimenting with this golden circle format. This means that we start with the why. And I personally believe that people don't buy what I do, they buy why I do it. And what I do is just a reflection of things that I truly believe. But I want to start with you, Andrea. Why experimentation for you, man?
For me, I mean, my background is in engineering, so I love data and I don't trust things until I see the figures. So for me, Peter Drucker's quote is definitely quite representative. We actually have an improved version of the quote that says that you can't improve what you don't measure. And that applies super well to tech companies, product companies that are making changes every day. And I want to measure those changes to see if they are good changes or not.
Andrea, this is super cool. I love the fact that your personal why comes from an engineering background, because I'm also an engineer, but my personal why is slightly from a different angle. I remember back in those quality engineering classes being fascinated by this idea of quantifying uncertainty and all the mathematical principles that are behind that, which is basically a lot from the applied statistics that we use in our daily experimentation toolkit. To me, again, this idea of quantifying uncertainty at some point evolved to decision science. And I started just studying how business leaders make decisions, because I believe, and I see this in iTech, leaders, product managers, they're all trying to make decisions to grow their businesses, right? It's just that some decisions will carry low risk, some decisions will carry more risk. And what strikes me is how many decisions in a daytime we make, sometimes unconscious, because again, some of them will just carry very low risk, such as, what am I going to wear today? Very little risk, and for me, straight up, just a black shirt. Andrea, what is a low risk decision that you make in a day?
Well, a small decision for me is definitely planning for lunch. As an Italian, of course, I love eating. So every morning I plan for my lunch. That's probably the smallest daily decision that I make every day.
Yeah. On the flip side, though, there are some decisions that just are too big, carry a lot of uncertainty and risk in a way that making the wrong call can impact the long-term success of an entire business. Do you have in mind any big decision like this?
Totally. I mean, obviously, as part of the A/B tests that I've launched in the past, there was quite big functionalities that were impacting the business and the revenue of the business. So I guess for everybody working in experimentation, every day there is a big and risky decision, whether you have to press the go live button or not. And I think that's risky enough for us to deal with.
Yeah, one of the examples that come to my mind is I was recently working with this, advising a YC startup in the fintech vertical, and they had a question in front of them. When are we ready to go live with our app from a beta stage to the market, to both Google Play Store and Apple Store? That's such a big decision, because making the wrong call can basically deny growth and success for that company because of bad reviews, because of bad PRs and whatnot. So the contrast between little risk decisions and big decisions, and how many of them we end up making in a day, especially in the business environment. Okay, as part of all this, well, I'm a quotes guy, Andrea, so I'm bringing this one, and we're going to quote it a couple of times from trustworthy online control experiments. I want to say it's a Bible for experimenters today, but here you go. In the past 2 decades, the technology industry has learned what scientists have known for centuries. Controlled experiments are among the best tools to understand complex phenomena and solve very challenging problems, aka make very difficult decisions. The ability to design controlled experiments, run them at scale, and interpret the results is the foundation of how modern high-tech business operate. This one coming from Kevin Scott, CTO at Microsoft. Back to our main question, why experiments? Well, we run experiments to measure success of changes that are important to the business, to de-risk those difficult decisions, and also to learn about the user's reactions. Because sometimes we're going to run experiments just to measure the difference in engagement from a content change. And we're not the ones coming up with this definition ourselves. This is actually, once again, coming from this book, Trustworthy Online Experiments, where people a lot smarter than us got together to reach this definition. So we run experiments to measure impact, reduce risk, and learn from users' reactions. The teams from Microsoft, LinkedIn, and Amazon got together and put that definition for us. Now, let's bring this to reality. Andrea, we both know and we agree that this is somehow a lot easier and straightforward in the paper, even though we both know how iTech, how the business has experimentation at its core, at its foundation. It all started with the founders being curious and testing things, what sticks, what not, in terms of business model. So what is your take on this easier said than done?
I totally agree with you, John. Experimentation and its foundations, like they're very hard to criticize if you think about it logically. Everybody would agree that making changes and measuring their impact is mandatory. This is on paper though, because in reality it's not that easy. A good example is what happened with me in iTech. When I joined the company, we were less than 50 people. Everybody was really on board with experimentation, and doing tests was super easy and everybody was on board. But then we started from, as you can see from the slide, from a little neighborhood. And then we started growing, becoming more like a big neighborhood or a city. And growth brought new challenges for the experimentation mindset and the program that we used to have in place. So what we did is that we've done a lot of work to identify what we needed to keep the experimentation program at the same levels and even better than when I joined the company. And we've agreed that we needed a common language. We need a clear work remit because, of course, when you're growing, there's a lot of new people starting every month. So it's important that you have a clear work remit so that everybody can get on board as quick as you can. We definitely need a scalable way of working because, of course, we grew and more products means that we needed to find a scalable way of working. And last but not least, when you grow, you start changing structures. We change structure. We're working with the Spotify model in squads and tribes. And so our chapter is experimentation and analytics. So we needed alignment with our chapter vision as well.
So I believe now it's time for us to start agitating, because we've been talking a lot in terms of experimentation, but do we mean CRO? No, we don't. But here's where we don't want to give just a generic answer to the topic. I believe it's important for us to start with a disclaimer, because this operation system that we're about to show was nominated to the Experiment Culture Awards this year. It's crazy when I stop to think about, because we were competing against Toyota, which started this whole thing about continuous improvement. But once again, the disclaimer is that this system, this operation system, works perfectly to iTech. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's plug and play for your business reality. Every company is unique. So this works as a perfect guidance. But once again, it works based on how our product team is structured and how the economic mode of our business, what we're trying to deliver to the world. Perfect. So the operation system, or experimentation, as this overarching structure in iTech, is split into 3 workflows. We call them active streams. As you can see, OKR, or product initiatives, as we like to call them, CRO, already demystifying, CRO being an active workflow inside the overarching structure of experimentation, and safety net. What we're going to do here, Andrea is going to help us going one by one, explaining what it is, how we measure success, and we're going to keep painting a picture with examples to better clarify terms and bringing them to reality.
Sure, John. So let's start from the first one, OKR initiatives or product initiatives. So when your company starts growing and you structure yourself in product teams, there's always this dichotomy between CRO people and product people in trying to understand what are the priorities. So we align everything in terms of experimentation program by using an OKR initiative stream. So all the priorities that the product and the rest of the squads and tribes in our model define for the season that involve experimentation become OKR initiatives. And the experimentation person that works on that product obviously will help the entire tribe to execute these experiments. These typically are the biggest changes that we want to make in a season because they are the top priority, and that's why they make it to the objectives and key results planning. But yeah, this is pretty much the OKR initiatives. If I can give you an example, let's say that you are in e-commerce and you are completely remaking the registration process, that's going to be an OKR for sure. And we as experimentation team support the rest of the tribe in understanding what are the pain points, planning and brainstorming new ideas, and definitely executing and analyzing them. The second stream is the CRO stream. The name is quite controversial and can be a bit misleading, so let me give you more information about it. As I mentioned earlier, the first stream is the OKR initiatives, and there's already a lot of tests that come out of that. But during the season, not only the areas of your product where the rest of the squads and tribes are focusing are important. We know that from past experience, and we decided to create this CRO stream that is basically going to complement the product initiative stream. So if, let's say that the entire squad for this season and tribe this season is working on the registration process, with the CRO stream, maybe you can focus on product pages. This stream typically is a bit more independent than your current initiatives. It can be run by an experimentation squad, so 3 or 4 people that are dedicated to deliver CRO tests. And it's been always quite successful for our company to have this stream in place. And last but not least, there is safety net. This is a very important stream that sometimes we overlooked in the past. And it's meant to be a safety net for any change that goes live on the site and didn't involve experimentation in the process. So typically, we used to go live with some changes that people didn't think were necessary to be tested. And now we agreed to start A/B testing changes that can have a big impact on the user, even if they didn't involve experimentation. Just to give you an example, let's say that you're making a small copy change that is above the fold. A lot of people might think, oh, why are you bothering testing? But your metrics can be really hurt by these changes. So with Safety Net, we just basically interact with other chapters at the end of the funnel where testing is needed. We typically don't contribute in the idea and problem definition. But yeah, it's been quite successful, and I highly recommend to implement this stream because it's going to make you save a lot of money.
All right, Andrea, I really like the examples that you have because they tell a story. And let me see if I can close the loop tying them together. So let's imagine that we have our product team focused on the registration process of our e-commerce because it's something that it's very important for the business. This project has a lot of dependencies, right? From UX because of information hierarchy, from product design because of lo-fi and hi-fi, the front end and back end engineers because of the data handling, SEO potentially because of interlinking, and of course conversion because how the heck are we going to measure that experiment? That's the focus of our product team. On the other side, we have a dedicated task force running a CRO stream on the product page because it's not the focus, but it's still a template highly valuable for the business. They have more autonomy and they're running in parallel to keep boosting and extracting performance of that template. Last but not least, let's imagine that our content team is continuously working on delivering, on evolving this long-term SEO strategy. And they're running some quick changes above the fold content-wise. So for us to not do those changes and go live without measuring the impact, once again, the definition of why we run experiments, we help them to structure this as a safety net test. Is that the complete picture?
Totally spot on. Yes, that's exactly it.
Perfect. This is really a complete picture, a story that comes out of the three workflows, how those things tie together. But Andrea, one of the things that we keep talking internally as the continuity of this workflow, this operation system, is that now, in terms of operations, the nuts and bolts, we need to support product managers to identify the types of skill set that they need to ensure execution excellence for, let's say they decide to run a CRO stream. What kind of skills are necessary? Are the same skills necessary for every single workflow? How does that work? How are we thinking through this?
Yes, so let me start with a quote that I really like, that is, standing in the shoulders of giants, in most cases, is better than reinventing the wheel. So for this specific topic, I got the inspiration from Johnny Longden's article, the link is here in the slide, where basically he showed the skills that your teams need to run experimentation programs. And we started from that and we added the iTech flavor. So let me tell you a bit more about how this works. So as you can see, it's just a circle with 3 rings, and there are 3 sectors. There are mainly 3 areas. One is, of course, experimentation and analytics. The second is engineering, and the third one is design and content. And within each of these sectors, there are 3 rings. The first ring, so the inner ring, is the one that contains the skill that, let's say, are mandatory or like must have for your team. And then the second ring is for more like an intermediate state of your experimentation program where you start growing and you can add more skills to your team. And the third ring, the last one, is for the excellence, or like it will be like the dream team of experimentation, where you can also add, the little details that make a difference when running high velocity programs in experimentation. So maybe we can start having a look at the first ring. Let's have a look at what skills are necessary. At the center, in the middle of this graph, we've put data-driven, because at the end of the day, you can't run an experimentation program if you're not data-driven. And typically, companies that are not data-driven, they don't have an experimentation program in place. So that's the must-have. And then, looking at the design and content sector, for instance, of course, you need a designer. So UI design is a skill that you need in your team. Copywriting, because at the end of the day, websites are made of copy. So you need somebody that is skilled in writing copy and making it work for the user. Stakeholder management is one of the skills that probably you need in every job, but in experimentation, it's also very important. Statistics, A/B tests are statistical methodology to validate ideas. So definitely you need statistics. Project management, because, like when you have a lot of ideas, you need to prioritize, you need to make sure that the execution is right. So project management skills. Digital analytics, because you need to track the data of your test. Tracking and test setup, this is more like for the setup of the events and the tracking that you need in place. This is in share with engineering. Some teams use engineers, some teams use experimentation people to put these things in place, but it's a skill that you need in your team. And then front-end development, because of course you need to code the test, and QA. That is very often overlooked, but it's critical and crucial for executing tests and making sure that they don't break the site. So this was the first ring. Let's take a look at the second ring. In terms of design and content, you start probably adding UX design, qualitative research, and a bit of quantitative research as well. This is, I think the UX is extremely important for running experiments. From my experience, teams start adding UX at a later stage, it's not in the initial phase of experimentation. In terms of experimentation and analytics, having experts in psychology and behavior, that's like, that would be perfect and spot on for the team. Becoming better or having great storytelling skills also helps a lot. Improving reporting, because typically when the experimentation program grows, also you run more experiments and you have more stakeholders. So the way you report back is going to be extremely important. And for engineering, complexity of testing goes up. So backend development skills are also very important. This is what I will add at the second stage to the team and what we did in iTech. And last but not least, the third ring. For design and experimentation, I've added design thinking as it's a way of developing the product that is advanced, very effective, but requires maturity in your team. So this is why it's part of the third ring. Data science, for the same reason in experimentation and analytics, you might want to change the frameworks that you use to run statistical analysis. And in general, like having a data scientist in your team will just simplify your life and improve the quality of the data and the insights that you generate from testing. And with engineering, building automations, this is in share with experimentation and analytics. Again, your program maybe grew a lot, you run a lot of experiments, you want to democratize experimentation, so a lot more teams are running experiments. You need to find a way to build automation, so you enable everybody to run experiments. And last but not least, A/B testing platform ownership. This is a pattern that I've seen in big companies. The big guys that do experimentation, they typically have a proprietary platform, and they have an engineering team that leads this platform. And this is true when complexity goes up. There's a lot of backend dependencies involved, and you want more flexibility that a third-party tool won't give you. So yeah, this is pretty much the full picture of the dream team skills that you can have to run experiments.
Andrea, I told you a couple of times that as a visual learner, I really love how you put this visual, this chart together, because it really clarifies what it takes to build this dream team for experimentation from iTech's angle. Here, I really think that it gives almost a roadmap for a product manager from the first to the third ring. You really know what to expect. And I love how this talks in terms of skill set, not necessarily of people or position or even technical capabilities or tactics. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of unicorns in this experimentation world. And sometimes the right person will be able to fulfill a bunch of those skills and capacities. My question and what we see internally is, does that mean that if I want to run a CRO workflow, I need the entire inner ring? I need maybe the entire third ring? What skills does my team need based on the workflow that I decide to keep active? How do we go about answering this?
We try to put in place a radar chart, and please take it more as a qualitative than a quantitative chart. But as you can see from the picture, the product initiative stream is the one that requires the highest degree for each area in terms of skills. We basically, to plot this chart, we added 6 categories. We start from digital analytics, project management, UX, UI and content, statistics, engineering, and research. And as you can see, the red one, which is product initiatives, is the one that requires pretty much expertise in all the areas. This is more so on the experimentation side. And the CRO stream, the one in green, overlaps pretty much with the product initiatives. But as you can see, there's a spike in project management. That's because product initiatives typically are initiatives that are conducted at a tribe level. So there's a lot of stakeholders involved, and typically delivery and product are doing the project management of the project. Whereas in the CRO stream, that is a bit more independent, it's the complementary stream that we talked about. The experimentation person will require more project management skills, or it's going to be heavier on that aspect. It's probably less heavy on the engineering. In fact, as you can see, there are 3 levels of difference, just because the initiatives that you do in CRO probably are less complex than the big product initiatives that are scheduled for the season. The last one is the safety net, that is the inner one. And as you can see, it's quite light on most of the aspects, because for us in experimentation team, we only mainly contribute in the statistics side of things. So it's there that we are pinged and we need to help the rest of the people. But yeah, that's pretty much the plot. I think it's interesting just to visualize it and see that they're not that different, but they need, let's say, higher expertise in specific areas, depending on what type of experiments you want to run.
I really like how all those building blocks build up to this operation system that we put together. I believe that from all the conversations that we had internally, questioning those things and not finding enough material to find the answers, we ended up putting all this together and painting a picture how the CRO, as we mentioned, has less dependencies, and bringing something that Johnny Longden also suggests. There's a lot of project management involved in successful CRO programs. And then you see how this reflects in this qualitative map, that CRO, because of its autonomy, requires better project management, and how this reflects to the amount of skills that you can start building up from the first level ring to all the third level ring to build up this dream team of experimentation. I believe this is the complete picture of the operation system that we're building in terms of an experimentation process for iTech. This is really cool. Andrea, we talked about a couple different things today. So if we have 3 takeaways for the people listening to us today, could you close it up?
Totally. I'll give you 4. I'll give you 1 extra. One is
Bonus.
Definitely that experimentation is about decision making. So I think having that in mind when building teams, when planning on how to run your experimentation program is going to be vital. The second takeaway is a possible model that you could implement and also improve. This is a continuous improvement work. So please, in future, if you have ideas on how to improve it, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to work and add on top of what we already done. But yeah, I think product initiatives, CRO, and safety net are a good way of understanding the different types of experiments that you can run in squads and tribes model, and it's working really well for us. The third one is definitely that different workflows or different streams, different types of experiment might require a slightly different team configuration and definitely skill sets. And the fourth one is that experimentation is a team activity. And this is something that I've learned with the growth. When you are like a bunch of people, let's say less than 50 people in my case, it was very easy. You didn't have to get buy-in. And it was also very independent in running experiments. But then when you start growing and you start becoming 300, 400, thousands of people, you need to start thinking at the team level. You need to start collaborating more. You need to start democratizing experimentation, because if we work, if you still try to use the solo approach, the one-man band approach, it will definitely create conflicts, and it's not going to be effective to run your experimentation program.
As we mentioned, we're social, and we love to hear thoughts or receive contributions on how to keep this growing. So if you also reached until this point of the presentation, we believe you find value from following our thoughts and things that we publish on LinkedIn. So here you have it. We're social. Get in touch. Andrea, it was wonderful to get this morning coffee with you today. It's great to be participating in the first Experimentation conference. Thank you for the time, man.
It's been fantastic. And thank you very much, John, for collaborating with me on this one.